Love and hate can never be friends. Oh no, oh no. Here I come with love and not hatred. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow I all the days of our life.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Look how I'm living now. Police be tripping now. Yeah, this is America. Guns in my area. I got the strap. I gotta carry him. Yeah, I'ma go into this. Yeah, this is gorilla. Yeah, I'ma go get the bag. Yeah, oh yeah.
Ain't this what they've been waiting for? You ready? I used to pray for times like this, to rhyme like this, so I had to grind like that, to shine like this. In a matter of time I spent on some locked up in the back of the paddy wagon, cuffs locked on wrist.
All's my life I has to fight. All's my life hard times like yeah, bad trips like yeah. Nazareth, you God got us, then we gon' be alright. Be alright. Be alright. We gon' be alright. Do you hear me? Do you feel me? We gon' be alright. Be alright. Huh? We gon' be alright. Be alright. Do you hear me? Do you feel me? We gon' be alright. And when I wake up, I recognize you looking at me for the pay cut. Bahamas, I be looking at you from the face down. One Mac 11, even boom with the bass down. Scheming, and let me tell you about my life. Painkillers only put me in the twilight. But pretty is the highlight. I tell my mama I love her, but this what I like.
This one I gotta do with the jabata. Me, I know get the jabata.
Spiroach Beats.
Biggie bang bang.
Biggie, heavy, baby, woman. Haba, biggie, heavy,
Yeah, you're the one I want, oh. Before my liver start to fail, you're the one I need, oh. Before cassava start to hail, and if I ever leave, oh, make what I carry me, they go far away, far away. So I am looking for the sister, Joma, my lover, oh. She got the dollar, she the wear designer, oh.
Joanna, your busy body busy tonight.
Man,
knocking on the door, me tonight. Joanna, your busy body giving me life, oh. Hey, life, hey. Why you do me like Joanna? Jo.
Just going back to my address of my management team, this is what I wrote. This was pretty difficult to read out the first time. I think the whole management team were emotional, but so here goes. I believe it's important to vocally share my thoughts on how George Floyd's death, the following incidents, and how it affected me. The initial response on the Tuesday after the killing happened was, so what? It's just another black guy, unarmed, killed by the police. However, this does feel a little bit different. There's all the social unrest that we're experiencing from COVID. People have been stuck in their houses, having more time to reflect, catch up on news, the news repeatedly going in. But the people have spoken. Enough is enough. In preparing for today's address, in the last 36 hours, I found myself unlocking a great deal of thoughts, issues, and emotions. For those that think I have no emotions, yes, I have cracked, and yes, this means that much to me. Every mindless death of a black person has an impact on our black employees and the communities we serve. I'd like to use this time to give you some background to how I connect to this and how many of our black colleagues are feeling. I hope that this will leave you with thoughts to reflect on and some ideas on how to help. Some of your initial questions may be, how are you? Are you okay? How can we help? The answer is no, I am not okay. The unjust murder of George Floyd simply isn't right. The circumstances have touched new nerves and emotions that I'd even recognize within myself. When I saw what happened to George Floyd on May 25th, when ex-policeman Derek Chauvin casually kneeled on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. I just paused for 8 seconds. Can you imagine how long that feels? He callously, with his hand in his pocket, while he begged for his life. There's no doubt in my mind that there was no fear of recourse on the part of Officer Chauvin. While there's nothing to prove that this was a race issue, it does make me question the justice system. This was not the first time Chauvin had kneeled on someone's neck, but it's the first time we witnessed it. As I watched the video multiple times, I went through so many emotions, from anger, disbelief, frustration, but most importantly, I felt overwhelmed with sadness for our race. I could not watch someone do that to an animal, let alone a human being. What was going through his brain? What would make him do that? Why would he think he could get away with it when someone's actually videoing him? Why did he kneel on his neck of all places? Why did he not listen to the 10 or more pleas from George? I can't breathe. Mama, help. All of this for a man with no weapon, cuffed on the floor, with 3 policemen standing over him. What gave Chauvin that power? How can anyone have that power? Furthermore, I was disheartened to learn that who examined George Floyd said that the death was not due to asphyxiation. It just reinforces the point. It's not only about the police. And for the record, I don't think every policeman's bad or every policewoman's bad. It does make you question the system. This is about systemic racial issues, and we have to start talking about it. Whilst I do not advocate for the looting, violence, and damaging of people's properties, some of these actions are a cry for help, which just spiraled out of control and sadly diluted the underlying issue. There are many theories that looting has been fueled as a way of distraction. Many there to create havoc and capitalize as career criminals. But either way, it's tarnished a very meaningful movement. What I plead with you all is not to let the riots and the violence distract us from the real narrative here. The cause and the issues are to tackle racial equality and social justice. The issue being magnified since 25th of May is not only a US thing, and many people ask, what's it like, the differences between the UK and the US? This is not just a US thing. This is global. Talk to our colleagues in South Africa, Brazil, so many other countries. History is repeating itself, and I've come of age to feel responsible and accountable. I see this as a virus, a pandemic worse than COVID, and one that's existed for hundreds of years. I ask myself if or how we're ever going to break this cycle. So no, I am not okay. Presently, I'm finding it difficult to switch modes at work, going from having a deep conversation on how to tackle the fundamental issues that we face with, and then what the firm needs to do, to instantly flipping back into business as usual, constantly changing my mood, being upbeat and callously conversing on business activity, mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausting. For me, for many. Unfortunately, I'm in a position to manage some of my work schedule, but please know that this is weighing heavy on many of your team members, family or friends' hearts, and they need support. Not just your black employees. The looting current conditions we're living in under and the fear is felt by many of us. Many of you already challenged why the need for diverse inclusion. COVID, the murder of George Floyd should have served in mind how much work we have to do as a society and the significant hurdles that exist for equality. I'm going to share a little bit more about my black background. Grandfather, my dad's dad, was born in the early 1900s in Jamaica to a white mother and a black father. I never had clarification how my great-grandparents' relationship came about, but my great-grandfather was likely a slave. My grandfather went on to marry a black woman. On my mum's side, her father was a native Indian from Cuba who somehow ended up in Jamaica. He also went on to marry a black woman. So whilst I am black, I do have a little mix, as do many of us. 12.5% white and 25% Indian. In the 60s, both of my parents immigrated to London, which is where they met, and were faced with brutal resistance from English people who did not want immigrants taking their jobs. Sound a little bit familiar with Brexit? Back then, there were signs outside many bed and breakfasts and pubs. No blacks, dogs, and Irish. The black and Indian immigrants were attacked frequently by gangs, known as mods or the National Front. When I was born in the 70s, the condition was slightly different, but racism was still a topic. The lucky part for me is I grew up in Brixton, where it was predominantly black. It was the crime capital of London for a long time, but I didn't have that much interaction with white people, unless they were Irish. Oh, and the dogs as well. At 6 years old, I witnessed my first riot as people ran past my house with their stolen goods. I never understood why, other than thinking to myself, I wanted a new TV too. The riots were started by an incident on the 10th of April 1981, after the death of Michael Bailey, a young black man who was stabbed and later died in custody of police. The police were more interested in arresting him than getting him an ambulance. His family started the march, many others joined. In 1985, Cherry Gross was shot in her house, unarmed. The Metropolitan Police were looking for his son, who was a suspect for a crime. Mark Duggan was shot 4 times by police when unarmed in 2011, causing yet another riot. So you see, 4,000 miles away, almost 40 years on, I'm still witnessing the same injustices, citizens standing up for themselves, and being overshadowed by bad actors while the media focuses on switching the narrative. I had the rare privilege amongst my friends of having both parents in our house, but that ended when I was 12, which was when my mum and dad got divorced. Losing a father figure at 12 led to my mum holding down 3 jobs, which ultimately opened the door for me to go off the rails. It was touch and go for me, but luckily football as my passion, a phenomenal mum, an older sister as a second mum, and my 16-year-old brother stepping up, I had my guardian angels. Not everyone had my football talent to distract them or the strength of my family to support them. Many of my classmates from school, some academically smarter than me, are either in prison or dead. Many had great ambitions to conquer the world and make a difference. However, their role models did illegal things. So guess what? Many of my friends resorted to crime, as it was seen as the only way out or to the top. Many became CEOs of illegal narcotic companies before the age of 21, running million-dollar businesses. They were natural leaders with great ideas, people management skills, and entrepreneurial spirit. The only difference for them was that they did not have access or insight to corporations. They were just subject to the environment. As am I, only I was just the blessed one. I was the 1 out of 100 who ended up going down the right path. Fortunate because of my guardian angels, willpower, a little lady luck, and fate. Despite the differences of our outcomes, I was still loved and respected as the one who got away by the people that some refer to as thugs. It was a path that many aspired for, but sadly felt was outside of their reach. Society has lost so many young black talent due to the circumstance and environment they were born into. By the time I got into the corporate world, I'd hardened myself to my simple facts that all white people are racist, that they are against me, and in order to succeed, I have to be 2 times smarter, 2 times more harder working, 2 times more effective, 2 times better than everyone, whilst also trying to fit in and hold on to my core values, to never give them a reason to stop me from progressing. I spent a lot of time thinking that this is the only blueprint for black people to be successful, as do many of the people who work for you today in today's environment. So we have to take a hard look at corporate America. The truth is, I still believe that there is cases today, in a large extent. For many years, I trained myself to accept it, to overlook minor inequities. The sportsman in me coached myself to believe that I'm still a captain. Don't be a victim. Figure out how to win. However, I was silent. I didn't talk about it. Maybe if I did, I would not be here. Or maybe if I did, more people who look like me would be here. Fortunately, I've awakened to these responsibilities to be loud, to be vocal, and to say, this is not okay. For the black talent at our firm to have to feel that we must be 2 times better is just not okay. I think this is a topic, though, that many of you can lean into within your families, at work. Don't be afraid to tackle it. Many black employers will not share their story or open up about experiences. There's a lack of trust. Many of our black colleagues want to get by without being labeled as that troublesome person. Many black colleagues' ambitions for success in corporate America may have dwindled as they failed to be accepted or understood. Many worry about being talked about whilst not in the room. Many worry or question how important it is to fit in versus just being good at your job. Whilst I know many of you want to show empathy and learn, I hear you. Worried about how to approach it. It could be uncomfortable for me. Please consider this, sir. You are in a position of power, and many of your black colleagues have learned to deal with this discomfort, and they live it every day. It's time for you to get uncomfortable as leadership. It's required. Just know something as well. When you engage with another black professional, each of them is likely to have a story and anecdote about their career and racial adversity that had to come to be successful. However, this is not an experience or fear for blacks only. It's one for all people who are underrepresented. Many of the women on the call today will have an example of how they, as a minority, were treated differently or not given a chance, being the only in the room. Hate, discrimination, and racism is not just been exhibited towards black people. Attacks on Asians have increased since COVID-19. Attacks towards Indian people of Middle Eastern descent increase each time there's a terrorist attack in our country. These are just visible examples. However, think that underrepresented very often cannot bring these troubles to work. They can't even tackle some single-minded comments from colleagues. So we have to ask ourselves why. It's because we, the collective we, even on this call, have not created an environment for them to feel comfortable that speaking up comes without consequence, which means that unconscious or conscious bias just continues. The underrepresented are in desperate need of trusted allies, advocates, and sponsors, more now than ever. Some people may think, surely there aren't prejudice in today's workplace. Well, I can confirm, I see the subtleties of it now that my eyes are open. So being black in banking. Back in the day when I was first beginning my career, I encountered outright racism multiple times. I once had an interview and I found out after that the senior person turned to the manager who was interviewing me and said, "You sure you can be trusted?" But funnily, once they got to know me and they got to see that we were very similar, that same manager, 5 years later, would promote me to break a record of becoming one of the youngest vice presidents in our division when I was 24. And he still refers to me this day as his son. Or the other time, when one of my old boss's boys' kids in for the weekend, after 3 hours of hanging out and playing, the little kid turned around to me and said, "Steve, why is your face black?" The dad was mortified. But what he said is his son was not around black people. And all it was, he just said to be educated. Again, another boss that to this day will call me his son. But back then, he would ask me questions and I'd educate. I feel like we're in an environment now where everyone's too scared to say the wrong thing, but that means we're not being educated. So, but there are also many positive examples, like my fairy god sponsor, the white Jewish senior boss. He was my biggest sponsor from day one, and all he saw was my raw talent and took my attitude and fearlessness as a positive as opposed to being a threat. At the age of 23, though, I'd traveled a bit, I'd got to know some of my white colleagues, and my opinion on racism had changed. Barriers were broken down. I felt more comfortable. I let my guard down. I found confidence that despite my blackness, I was still a leader. Today, many of my white peers or old white peers are my best and most trusted friends today. Now, most professionals in corporate America are smart enough not to vocalize their personal beliefs against what is accepted in the workplace. We all know that we have to watch our every word. So, but we still see samples, and this is where I talk about the microaggressions, because if you're African or you have African descent or you never had material, sometimes you want to show it off. But a quote would be, "Wow, isn't he flashy?" Someone feels like they're isolated because they don't fit in. He's so antisocial. She or he has a chip on their shoulder, but you don't know what burdens they're carrying at home or in the environment. They are not a team fit. It's probably the worst. But what do these statements mean, really? I'm hopeful because the world continues to become more socially educated. There are many people speaking up right now and that are not black, and they're challenging these wrongs. And to those courageous people, I thank you. However, there's so many that are still smart enough not to vocalize their lack of understanding or desire to keep separation, but conniving enough to silently take actions to keep things the way they are. We must actively look for this type of person, call these behaviors out, and weed them out of our organizations and our lives. I've always tried to avoid letting color or race issues be at the forefront of my mind when engaging with people. I always give the benefit of the doubt and would like to think that we all do. However, I cannot and will not walk away anymore. It is imperative that we call out this behavior, call them out. I also feel it's okay to acknowledge our differences, whether it be color, religion, or humanitarian beliefs. We will learn and change the system when we're all educated. This will lead us to all appreciate and celebrate all of our differences. I see my blackness as a gift, my inheritance and my perseverance as a blessing. I've embraced all of my experiences that made me the person I am today, and I feel confident enough to own it. But I am the 1 out of 100 that just got through. You have to help me to get more like me through. The 1 out of 100. Have a think about those odds in your respective teams. I'd also like to share a little bit, like a wake-up call, being in America, about culture and your kids and the fear you have for your own life and kids. My wife, as many of you will know, is Guatemalan and Mexican and born and raised in New Orleans. With me being born in Britain and my Jamaican heritage, my poor twins are confused. They have American and British passports, and I had to even create their own identity because I don't want to lose any of it. So they're officially Amenguaxicans. I'm blessed that my twins do not see color as an issue. To share my favorite story, in 2014, I hosted an all families Christmas dinner. We had both sides of grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins around the table. There were 15 people and 14 shades of color, with me being the darkest and my brother-in-law, an Anglo-Saxon, very pale white guy. But that said, I think my twins love the two of us equally, which probably makes me a bad dad or him a fantastic uncle. But that's my hope for the world one day, where the conversation is only about good people and bad people, one where we have less bad actors in the world. Monday, the 25th, though, reminded me that as a black parent, we have to sit my twins down soon and shatter their illusion that they cannot ignore their skin color, and we'll have to face the horrors that the world has to offer. I have to prepare them for the worst, the first time they get stopped by the police, and to know in that very moment, their rights are at the mercy of an individual with a gun. The UK has its issues too. However, stories like George Floyd's happen far too frequently in the US. From my encounters, the police in the UK are a bit more respectful and less aggressive. And I've developed a new and very real fear of being stopped by a policeman in America or woman in America. A bad twitch could end up being my last breath. Being spoken to in a demeaning or degrading tone and demands with any non-compliance, possibly get me a night in jail or worse. I say to myself, Steve, pray you don't get stopped. Be calm, don't bite. Dip that big mouth of yours. Do as you're told, boy. Hands on dashboards immediately. Everyday black people fear, black persons fears for themselves and their children. This fear lives with us in the back of our minds and comes in the forefront the second you're pulled over. This is a burden that we have to live with and leave at the front door of the building when we come to work. We avoid discussing on work calls, but hey, you know what, we're here to work. But this threat is real. And the sad part is that many of you would not even know. This is my reality as a black managing director in corporate America. Monday 25th was a hard pill to swallow for many reasons, a grave act committed that we would not expect to see towards any human being. We cannot sit by, do nothing, say nothing, like some of Chauvin's colleagues. I worry a great deal about the direction society is heading in. I see more fear and less trust of each other, a lot more disdain towards minorities, impatience, hate, and distance building up between races and religions. I ponder a great deal about what can be done. For me, the world right now is on fire, and I just wonder how we heal. I think it begins with each and every one of us speaking up and speaking out. I do not think people will understand just how much bravery it took for people like Mark Mason to write his blog, but I think we have a duty to honor his courage with more bravery, resilience, and strength that we've never mustered before. With that, I'd like to close with some action items that we can all walk away with today. So what can you do? Number one, rip off the Band-Aid. Rip off the Band-Aid and stop worrying about corporate and legal risk. Reach out to everyone black in your team or that you know and simply tell them you are there for them. Ask, are you okay? Continue to say that you cannot put yourself in their shoes, but you want to listen and understand. It is important to listen. Remember, you are not expected to have the answers. Ask questions to learn. You have nothing to fear if it comes from the heart. 2, try not to come to conclusions on certain terms which are cries for help. Ask questions and learn. When the term Black Lives Matter is used, why do you think it means all lives do not? It's an ironic plea to remind the world that we exist and do not feel we have justice and treatment the same as everyone else. 2B, when you hear Black Power, it's saying we would like a bigger piece of the pie, as many feel we're undervalued and do not have the respect and appreciation we deserve. Point 3, try to learn more in general about Black culture and how we feel. 3A, when was the last time you went to lunch with a person of color? 3B, when was the last time you had a person of color over for dinner at your home? Point 4, ask yourself how many Black people do you have in your team? Why do you not have more Black team members? Is your population a fair reflection of the demographic of where your team resides? How many Black people do you have in your talent roster? Who is the most senior Black person in your organization? Just ask yourself why they want more. 5, replace empathy with a commitment to action. Replace your lack of understanding with a commitment to learn. Practice rigor, structure, and purpose in playing your part. Keep the dialogue going amongst yourselves, within your teams, and make a commitment. Execute, make another commitment. Execute, never stop. So as I conclude today, my hope is that you do not let our quest for humanity die, as so many before us have. Turn this energy into a drive and commitment, the start of the end. I advocate for all people and all lives, but today, the narrative is about raising the value of Black lives and committing to change. I do not profess to speak for all people, and I'm most certainly not a scholar in this very critical matter, but I'm willing to share my perspective and open up the conversation. So thank you for listening. Let me share my experience. I'm going to pause for a solid minute to let this soak in. You can gather your thoughts, and then feedback will be welcomed on the call or online. Thank you.
Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright. Singing, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright.
Do you know what it means to have a revolution? And what it takes to make a solution? Fighting